Welcome to Mandibil. This is part 7 of my deconstruction of Keith Frankish's lecture series on illusionism. And last time I went about 16 minutes into which would be sort of an seventh or an eighth part of the whole case, lecture 2, the case against Coelia. So let's see how far I can get. I guess if this takes 50 parts to get through, okay, so be it, right? It's more important for me to reflect on each of his arguments or the lack of such than trying to get through it in the fastest way. I don't want to keep repeating the same arguments from my standpoint. He may repeat his arguments and I may feel that I need to reflect on the argument once again. But sometimes I feel that I'm repeating my same old argument, right? But, sometimes it's because I have used that argument in other deconstructions or in other videos I've done, and my regular listeners will, see them being repeated and using the same arguments and so on, trying sort of, it might start to sound a little sort of recycling of a kind. But, somebody who drops in and watches video number 3 of Keith Frankish, who hasn't listened to me before, possibly would want those arguments presented there, even if I've done them 12 other places in my videos, right? So it's like, it has to be dependent on the context in which it's used and so on. And, if it gets a little long-winded for you, well, okay, I guess I'll have to say too bad, right? If I've done that with this, like Stefan Molyneux, where I feel that there's nothing more possibly to gain from maybe the second part of a book or the third part of a video, saying, okay, this is not the main argument I'm going for. There might be something I might want to, comment on, but I'm not going to spend, parts of something that I find of lesser importance. So I might find out that there's some parts of this series here, or lectures, that I don't feel is necessary to delve into, then I'll just skip them maybe, right? But, if this is sort of attempt at hardcore philosophy, I wouldn't expect that. But let's see how far it goes. If it takes me 10 videos for each lecture to get through, okay, so be it. It'll take me, several months to get through this, right? But that's what I would want, because I have my approach to this is that while I'm doing this, I'm also reflecting on these aspects of philosophy. And there might be somewhere in lecture number 5 a point where I might not agree with whatever it is, in this case, Keith Frankish might present, but there might be something that starts my own head, philosophizing about certain aspects, which I then will, get a clearer understanding of, but I can't know that beforehand, right? I can't know what it is that triggers my own sense of the need for philosophy. I feel that I have a notion that I've got really a good, coherent philosophy from A to C, right? Or from alpha to omega, or whatever. There might be some areas where I still trying to piece I have the major pieces in place, but there might be some minor pieces that are a little fluffy that I still need to get around. I still have a sense that my big pieces are all in the right place at this point, right? So whenever I get down to finishing my book, it should reflect this kind of cohesiveness, right? But that doesn't mean that there could be little pieces here and there. I don't think any of the big pieces will be turned over. Well, I would want it to be if I realize I've been wrong. My thinking has been, fallacious, or what term you want to put on it, right? So I would really want to figure out if I'm not doing it right? But as long as there's no good argument for the contrary, I'm going to stick with whatever I feel is cohesive. It's not like I'm wedded to specific little areas of philosophy, just like Keith Frankish here. He has this pet subject called qualia, which he needs to have in order to, refute or, get past the hard problem of consciousness, which is sort of the last hurdle that physicalism needs to, accommodate somehow, right? And what he and his friends are going to say, well, it's just an illusion, so you don't have to explain anything, right? It's just an illusion. It doesn't matter that you have colors and tastes and sounds. It's just a fun psychedelia, right? So you don't have to. There is no hard problem, because what it ends up being in their opinion is that it's just a funny show. It's not an important show, so there's no need to explain the hard solve the hard problem of consciousness. That's the attempt he's basically trying here, in my opinion, right? But that's my interpretation, right? So it's also a part of the first lecture is that David Chalmers and the hard problem of consciousness and so on, right? So he's fully aware that the hard problem points out that physicalism and physics and chemistry and all these things can never get to the qualia, right? There's nothing about atoms or the second law of thermodynamics or Newton's laws or whatever law, Avogadro's number or anything like that, numbers and mathematics and anything that necessitates colors and sounds and taste and so on, right? It's like colors, sounds, and taste live in a world of their own, according to physicalists, right? I'm not taking into account that they're actually working from a fallacy or an ignorance of a paradox built into the way they think, right? Which I pointed out before several times, both in this and in Stefan Molyneux's Stefan Molyneux deconstructions, right? A guy like Bernardo Kastrup, he understands this problem, right? The paradox built in, pulling the territory out of the map, right? But I'm intrigued about how weird this thinking is and how fundamentally screwed up it is, right? All he does is constantly use qualia in order to try to convince me that qualias are an illusion, right? I'm not saying that you can't do that. I can't see that it's necessarily completely, though it sounds crazy, and it possibly is crazy, right? That from a logical reasoning standpoint can completely rule out that you can't argue against qualia, using qualia. I'm not saying that it's completely impossible. I can't rule it out completely, but my gut instinct is that it is completely, my gut instinct is that it's crazy, right? It's what Stefan Molyneux would call a self-refuting argument. And I would also stick to that, right? I mean, if you're using qualia in order to convince me that qualias are an illusion, if you're saying something is an illusion, it is something you shouldn't take seriously or put any meaning to or put any, what would the word be? And then he uses sounds and colors to explain that I shouldn't worry about sounds and colors, right? It's just contradictory in my point. I can't see it any other way. I can't rule out there might be some loophole where this can actually work as an argument. But from my standpoint, it's a contradiction, right? It's an implicit contradiction. Okay, let's head into the next part. Heterophenomenology.
One other term that I want to introduce here is heterophenomenology. This is a word that Dennett coined, and it's an important concept in his view of consciousness. I said that Dennett denies that qualia exist. Now, qualia are supposed to be what its likeness of experience, what it is like for you subjectively to have the experience you're having. So does it follow then that Dennett is ignoring the first-person perspective on consciousness, that he's just not interested in people's reports on their own experience, their own phenomenological...
Hey, why do you need to report it? You don't, if you're sitting alone on an island, you can have all sorts of experiences. You don't need to report them, right? That's making sounds that are sort of conventions about these sounds have this particular meaning, right? Reporting has nothing to do basically with the philosophy you're doing, right? You do that without explaining it or reporting it or whatever term you're using, right? The reporting could also be a lie. I could say I experience elephant, even though I don't experience elephant, right? How the hell would you know? Because the problem of other minds, right? So there are all sorts of little hints here and there in his use of language and the terms used and so on that hints at he hasn't got a real grasp of what he's talking about, in my opinion, right? This is another example.
Worlds, as it were, their inner lives. No, far from it. Quite the opposite. Dennett thinks that these reports are an essential source of data.
A report is a source of data. A report is a source of data. So if I say to you elephant, is that a source of data, or is it data itself, right? So all sorts of people talking about their experience, elephant and banana and, tractor and water closet and, whatever. Why are those data? Why is it essential? What does it mean that it's essential? Is a report, is that the color and taste and the sound? Or is it the objectification like elephant and beaver and so on? This is just, you're just, lumping huge amounts of philosophy just into a sentence there, just like it's given, right? These are the actual things you need to explain and settle in your philosophy, right?
For understanding consciousness, and we should collect these reports and get them in as much detail as.
So I should collect your reporting on your, your jar of pickles, right? You tell me pickles. You call me on the phone and say pickles. So I should collect that or what? Is that, what are you talking about, right?
As possible. In experimental conditions, for example, we should get detailed reports from subjects on what they see when we present them with different kinds of stuff.
What they see? But that's qualia. You're arguing against qualia. It's important that we get the reports about the qualia. Why? If you're arguing against qualia. I mean, what the fuck is the matter with you? I mean, it's so unbelievably stupid. It triggers me, right? It triggers me how stupid these philosophers are. Oh man.
Stimuli, visual stimuli, say, they show them different images in different parts of their visual field when we flash images before their eyes for a very short period.
We flash images. Well, an image, that's you call it an image, which is an abstraction of an experience, which is the qualia. It's important. What are you talking about, right? You're starting by telling me that these qualia are so important and we need to gather all this source of data in a lecture where you're arguing against qualia.
Period and so on. And all of this is essential data for understanding consciousness. How it seems to the subject is
data for understanding consciousness. So you need the qualia in order to understand consciousness. And then you say, now I know what consciousness is, so now I don't need the qualia. Is that it? So you use the qualia to get to consciousness. And when you have consciousness, you say, I don't need qualia. They're an illusion. But you just based your arguments, your reasoning about consciousness on qualia. What a fucking idiot, man. Oh.
absolutely vital for understanding consciousness. But, he argues, we shouldn't assume that these reports are accurate reports.
I don't like when philosophers use the term we shouldn't, or we must, and we, and we, and we. It slips from my tongue now and again, but I have constantly reminded people not to take we seriously, right? When I do that, it's because that's how the language is trained in me, and I'm trying to get away from it, right? This, we shouldn't assume. Who the hell are you to tell other people what they should assume, right? What does it mean that something is accurate, right? You just told me that qualia are, well, what's it, ephemeral, no, I forget the term. You can't explain colors. That's because there is no reference to colors. You have colors, you have tastes, you have sounds, and so on. They are the reduction base. That is the most direct experience you can have, right? It's the direct experience. It's not explanatory. You putting an explanation to it is stands for your own account, right? There is nothing that is given just because there is a color or a sound or something else, right? Nothing is given, even if you have an objectification that basically tells you this is an elephant. That objectification comes from the inside and arrived after you had the qualia experience, right? There's nothing about the qualia that tells you this is how it should or shouldn't be, right? So you can't talk about accuracy. There's no reference to qualia. That's why qualia are the reduction base, right? In my opinion. And it's so obvious, man. I mean, it's so obvious, and that, high-flying philosophers possibly can't see it because it sounds too simple, right? This is going to be... I have to take care of my blood pressure, right? No, I guess. It doesn't hurt to get, up in flames, right? I'm an emotional person in the sense that when I feel I'm being manipulated, I react to it, right? I might not, get angry or, yell or whatever. But if that's what I feel I have to do, then I'm going to do it. Why the hell wouldn't I? That's how I function, right? I don't care about, you should do this or do that, right? Maybe you find it virtuous or not virtuous. Fine, that's your judgment. I respect that, right? But a lot of how people react is subdued because they have been trained not to show emotion. Because their parents don't like them showing emotion. Because my children might not be accepted by the rest of the society. So I have to keep them down. Don't be angry. Don't be whatever, right? And that's why people are so emoji. Oh, I'm so happy. And pictures of people from companies and, a team. They're all jumping and smiling. And, we are just so, right? Sort of a fake emo, right? So if you can't be angry and, loud, I don't give a crap if you're always nice. And you also see that from this guy, Frankish. He's he's so gentle in his voice, right? He's not loud. He's not, whatever, right? Or, varying voice levels or whatever, right? Like I am. I am sort of basically, I possibly have some Italian genes somewhere, right? But he has been trained, and also because he's so gentle, he must be a serious philosopher. The gentleness is like a piece of candy that looks great, right? If it was sort of, looking weird or have a hysterical expression, you might I'm not sure about that food, right? Some food looks crappy but tastes very good, right? Some food looks very good but it's actually crappy when you get to taste it, right? So it's sort of this why am I going on a tangent? I'm losing track of what I'm actually trying to argue, but maybe I should just get back to the video, right?
Of an inner reality. Of course, they seem accurate from the perspective of the person who's giving them.
They, why are you saying they? What do you mean by they, right? This is also bad texting, right? They seem? You mean qualia seem accurate, right? Don't say they, write qualia. So let's take it from the start. Denying qualia doesn't mean ignoring the first person perspective of consciousness. So, yeah, okay, you're denying qualia, but you have consciousness. Okay, but wouldn't you say that you have consciousness because you can have qualia, right? If you didn't have qualia, why the hell would you have consciousness? Where would that appear from, right? Isn't it based on qualia or handling of qualia? And if you think there's other stuff arriving from the outside, because you're talking about an outside and an inside, so something must somehow get from that outside into the inside and manifest itself, so you are able to say, I think that is what is outside. So if the qualia is not that which arrives or that you take serious and think your consciousness is based on, what the hell is your consciousness then based on, right? How does that get there? How is that connection with that outside? If you're rejecting qualia, what the hell else is working, right? What channel is that? Sixth sense, seventh sense, or whatever, right? And senses like far from it. This is a bullshit, fluffy statement, right? Far from it, that's a distance. We're talking about arguments here. We're not talking about distances, right? And it's a figure of speech. Okay, but what do you need it, right? Such reports are an essential source of data. Are we talking about the conscious perspective or the qualia perspective? So reports about qualia are important. It can't be, because he's trying to reject qualia now, right? So if I'm rejecting what I argued before, then he's talking about you reporting about your consciousness, so he can know what is in my consciousness, right? But how could I do? How I could make something you call a report. But if I say elephant, do you know I'm experiencing elephant? No, all you know is that you have interpreted the sounds I create with my mouth as some kind of object you already have an idea of, a concept, right? That's all you know, if you know anything, right? You don't know that I'm experiencing elephant just because I say the word elephant, right? But we shouldn't assume they are accurate. So the reports are not accurate, or is it the qualia that are not accurate, right? So if I report blue, I say blue, is that not accurate? It's not completely wrong, but it's not accurate, right? Or is it the beaver I experienced that is not accurate, or what? Or what are you saying? It's a mess. You can't even put words together in a coherent manner, right? God, it's lousy, man.
The person who's doing auto-phenomenology.
They seem accurate from the perspective of the subject. But you only know your own subject perspective, right? You can talk all you want about other individual subjects. You don't know their perspective. You have no access to their perspective. So you are working from an unstated axiom that the experience you have is all that same kind of experience or perspective is also in other individuals, the subject in that individual. But you're not stated that you're working from that axiom. It's the problem of other minds, which you apparently just jump over like it's, oh, I don't care, right? The perspective of autophenomenology. So now there's a new word, right? It's the slide is called heterophenomenology, but now he talks about autophenomenology. which is sort of, okay, yes, we don't need to explain that, right? It's just like, what the fuck, right? You're just bringing in words sort of as you see fit, you know. I don't need to explain that, whatever, right?
Describing their own phenomenological world. These reports seem accurate and compelling. This is just how it is.
Well, accurate and compelling is not an argument, really, right? What are you comparing it to? You can listen to reports all you want. You have no access to what those reports are based on because of the problem of other minds, right?
With me, when I give the report. That's fine. We're not challenging the subject's authenticity or sincerity.
Why not? In my opinion, you should, right? That's why I'm doing this deconstruction. I'm challenging you, you know, you might have been convinced about your philosophy being so coherent and so on. I'm just trying to point out it isn't, and it sucks, and it's based on a paradox, and all sorts of other problems that in sort of the way you present it, and, you know, all sorts of weird stories about old women and boxes and pickles and sort of a weird kind of philosophy, right?
It's just that as investigators, we should adopt a more critical attitude, a third-person attitude, the attitude of hetero phenomenology. We're concerned with the phenomenology of another person, hetero phenomenology.
What? What the fuck is this? But scientists should adopt a critical third-person attitude. How the hell do you do that? You only have access to your first-person experience. Adopting not even a second person, but a third person. Sort of a God mode, is that what we're talking about here? Right? You should be a god, and it's a hetero phenomenon. It must be something along, everybody is experiencing the same thing. Adopt a critical third-person attitude. Have you any idea how freaking stupid that is? And why do you need to adopt it? It's like you should reject your own experience and say, it's not important. I'm going out of the cave into the light in the third-person mode and looking at the world and saying, you're wrong because you have qualia.
So then it suggests that we should treat these reports, phenomenological reports, as something like fictions, theoretical fictions, stories people tell that might or might not be true.
Okay. They are the scientists. So this they is a referential word that points to something else. They, right? There could be a lot of things. So now the they is pointing to the scientist. The they up in bullet number 5 was apparently either pointing to reports or the qualia that those reports, if I'm understanding that. So it's based on something that is based on something that is based on something. You're sort of losing grip of what we are talking about, right? He is basically using words that you haven't, it's not a part of your normal vocabulary here, right? And then he's sort of dragging you around and have pointers to this and to that and the other. So if you are still on top of this, okay, I'm happy for you, right? But I have to consider that I've lost contact with what he's talking about because I don't feel safe in this word salad, right? Not at all. They should treat the reports as theoretical fictions. Are you doing a report here? So reports are only about qualia, are they, right? So if you're not talking about qualia, then you're doing philosophy or what? It's a difference, right? Because if you're saying this is a report you're doing about your experiences, then I should reject it, right? Or I should, treat it as a fiction. that might or might not be true. How do I approach this, right? And what does it mean that it's theoretical? I don't think he's used the term theoretical. And a fiction, what is that? Is that just, you know, conjured up stories or what? So might or might not be true. I would say the same. If you're saying to me elephant, I can't know whether or not you're experiencing elephant. I know that you're saying elephant. Or if we can say that is knowledge, at least it's a reference to something that can be proposed, which is, I would say, elephant, right? But that doesn't mean that you're experiencing elephant just because you are proposing elephant, right? So it's like, he is walking around the problem and sort of poking at it with words and hoping that you're sort of at some point giving in and say, okay, I guess it's an illusion, right? He's not arguing directly from the ground up. He's just poking at you with various little tools here and there. And then he's possibly hoping that after 1 hour and 56 minutes, you're going to say, oh, okay, I give up. I have no arguments left. I guess I have to do as Frankish says. Something like that, right?
So think of a witness giving their account of what they saw at the scene of a crime. And
how do you identify a scene of a crime? What is the crime? Isn't that ethics, right? You're doing some kind of metaphysics here, right? Now I would be careful if I was you, if I were you, right? You haven't established. If you're talking about a case against Qualia, I would say you're doing metaphysics here, right? Or at least something where you're trying to see that's bad metaphysics. I have a better metaphysics over here. And now you're talking about a crime scene, whatever, right? That is imbued with some kind of ethics or morality. Now, in order to get to that and call something a crime scene, right? You need to have established both your metaphysics and your epistemology, in my opinion, and ethics in order to reference a crime scene, right? You can't talk about crime scenes in metaphysics, right? I mean, it's... Oh, man.
Let's accept that the witness is being sincere and honest and trying to give...
How do you know? You can't just establish an insight I cannot possibly have, right? You're saying, okay, but I have to trust that they're sincere. Okay, but who are you to tell me what to do, right? It's also this problem, the trolley problem, where you know that if you do this, this is going to happen, and if you do that, that is going to happen. Make a choice, right? That's bullshit, because nobody has that insight. It's bad setup, right? Because you're tricked into thinking you can have certain understandings of what is going to happen in the future. You can't know about the future, right? So,
as accurate a report as they possibly can, and giving a report that seems to them completely faithful to their experience. Still, we know that witnesses can get things wrong. People people can be subject to visual illusions. People can misremember what they saw. People can misinterpret.
How do they know? How do they know what they should experience rather than what they are experiencing? How do they know? Because it changed? Well, just because it changed, it doesn't mean that what it changed to was automatically the right one, and what it came from is not the right one. And if it hasn't changed, are you going to have to wait until it changed? Well, you can't know it changes until it changes, right? And if it hasn't changed that, how do you know that it's correct then, right? It's bullshit.
Things they've seen. People can make innocent mistakes like that all the time. So the detective receiving the report should take it very seriously, but shouldn't assume that everything...
What's a detective, right? Remember, you're doing metaphysics here, right? How the hell did a detective come into my consciousness without qualia, right? Are you using qualia in order to get to detective? Because then I have to take my qualia seriously, right? I can't treat them as an illusion. If I have to treat them as an illusion, how the hell do I get to detective? I don't have a sixth sense where detectives arrive, or witnesses arrive, or crime scenes arise, right? Those are interpretations from qualia. God damn it, right?
And it is absolutely accurate. Maybe there are certain bits in it that the witness got wrong. And it's worth stressing that even if the witness has got some things wrong, that doesn't mean that their report on those matters is completely useless to us. The subject might say that...
Useless to us? Who are those us? Well, there possibly some crime scene in Mombasa at this moment. Is that has some significance to me? And if not, why are you talking about us as only those who listen to your lecture, or everybody in the world, or a specific amount of a selection of people you haven't clarified? So it's just these fluffy terms. I fucking hate that, right? When you're doing metaphysics.
The number plate of the getaway car ended with a number 2. And that might be wrong, but perhaps it ended with a letter that looked like a 2, say a letter Z, which they misperceived as a 2. That would still be useful.
How would you know? Who is the one telling you this is the right way to interpret it, this is the wrong way to interpret it? What kind of reference do you have to that objectification? If you objectify it as a 2, and somebody says it's a C or Z, who's right? If you say it's 2, that guy says it's a Z, who's right? Is it the Z guy or the 2 guy? Well, both and none of them, or maybe one of them, right? It's up to you to just verify what you believe is correct. But you're the only one who has that experience, right? You can't lease it out to somebody else to say, you have to clarify whether or not that's a 2 or a Z, right? You have to do it yourself.
Information misperception can be useful if we can infer the correct information from it. So, as investigators of consciousness, we should take phenomenological reports very seriously, and we should ask to what extent they are accurate reports of real internal events.
What?
And if we...
What the fuck? Oh, man. Now, when we're talking of things being true and false, right? We are dealing, in my opinion, with epistemology. True and false has nothing to do in metaphysics. Okay, but he says, and that must be those cops or whatever, detectives in that crime scene, they should ask to what extent they are true. Those reports about qualia or what. But you can't ask if it's true. If people say, yes, it's true, is it true because they say that, yes, it's true? Oh! You can't ask for truth, right? You have to decide yourself whether it's true. Because if you cannot decide whether it's true, how can you ask anybody else to decide it for you? Right? Don't you get it, man? You have to be able to decide whether something is true. If you can't decide it, you can't say that somebody else can decide it because they must be in the same situation as you are, right? Why would they have some kind of magical ability to get to true if you can't, right? And if you're talking about their particular subjective experience, well, you can't check whether or not it's true, right? Because you don't have access to their experience. Right? the only one who has access to truth is you, right? And the other person has access to their truth, right? There is no hetero phenomenology where we can say everybody has this truth, right? It doesn't function that way. That's bad reasoning, right? You're not taking into account certain aspects of metaphysics that hasn't been settled yet, like the hard problem of consciousness and the problem of other minds and, causation and all these things that has been skeptics has been pointing out for ages, that you are drawing some leap of faith within your metaphysics as if it's given to you somehow. It isn't.
If we conclude that they aren't true, aren't wholly true, then we should ask why the subject made those reports and why.
But if they're trying to lie to you, right? They're not going to say, yes, I'm lying. So they're going to say it's true, right? And if they told the truth, they're not going to say that they lied because they told the truth. So in any case, they're going to say it's true, right? Unless they're completely crazy and want to manipulate you. Anyhow, you can't get to what that statement or that report is based on. You have no reference to the report or the truth or falseness of that report. It's impossible. You can't get to other minds. And if you can't, I would very much like you to tell me how you do that, right?
They thought they were true, why they seemed compelling. And all this will shed light on the nature of the processes involved. And there's a good description of Dennett's of the heterophenomenological method in Dennett's book Consciousness Explained, chapter 4. Okay, so that's all by way of preliminaries. Let's now actually get into some of Dennett's arguments against qualia. We're going to begin with his paper Quining Qualia from 1988. Quining here is a little joke. The verb quine is a jokey verb meaning to deny the existence of something that obviously does exist.
Okay, maybe it's a good point to start the next part. So we are 42 minutes into this and 21 and a half minutes into his presentation. So it's a good end point, right? But holy shit, man, this is bad philosophy, right? It's like he doesn't really know what the hell he's doing, right? He has some notion that you could argue for qualia being an illusion of some kind. It must be an illusion because there's a brain and those sort of qualia, not really, we already know there's an apple, so we actually don't really need the qualia. They're just there for show or for fun or, to make every day more sort of colorful or something like that, right? So his point is, all he's thinking about is, can I get around the hard problem of consciousness by arguing this way? And if I'm getting around hard problem of consciousness, I can stay in my physicalism, right? Physicalism and materialism is not challenged if I can somehow eliminate the hard problem of consciousness, which is what he's out to try to do, right? But the way he argues is based on a paradox. That's why this argument is never going to fly. However he throws words at you, it's never going to fly, right? Because it's fundamentally flawed, the base of his thinking, right? So I'm actually intrigued by how these guys jump through hoops in order to get to some kind of argument attempting to refute the hard problem of consciousness from a faulty base, right? And it always gets to this, you don't really understand what the hell they're talking about, right? You have to be in this crazy mindset in order for this to make sense, right? It gets complicated. The more he delves into, the more complicated it got. The more terms he throws at it, and it's a very good sign that it's bad philosophy when it gets more and more and more complicated. More and more words is added to the understanding, right? He has to keep throwing words at it, and this guy said this and that guy said that, and you know, it should, if anything, it should start by being slightly complicated and maybe a little hard to understand, but not more than that, and then get more and more simple, more and more clarified, and more like, oh yeah, I understand that. Yeah, okay, yeah, I get to that. Yeah, I can experience that myself, and so on. Yeah, I can reference my everyday. And yeah. No. He is in his clouds, and he's staying up there in the clouds. No. The qualia, the everyday experience. No. Let me get back into my clouds here, right? It's never going to fly, right? It's completely useless, basically, right? If you understand that it's based on a paradox. Okay. Share, like, and subscribe. Try joining the Discord. Links should be below. And consider a donation to I'm actually not starving, but you know, and to encourage me keeping doing this, right? So there should also be a lot of links to ways to donate. And if you join the Discord, there's also a description of how to donate in there. Otherwise, have a very nice day. See you next time.